Another interesting event that has been mentioned in a number of sources, for instance, Al-Bayhaqi narrates this, is that the Muslims missed the morning prayer. And this is how it happened. Bayhaqi has reported that when the Prophet ﷺ was returning from Hudaybiyah, suddenly his camel became very heavy. This was a sign that what was happening? Suddenly when the Prophet would stop and the camel becomes heavy, usually what was going on? Revelation. He was receiving wahi, revelation. So Allah reveals the first verse of Surah Al-Fath. As they were heading back to Medina from Hudaybiyah, the camel becomes heavy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the beginning of Surah Al-Fath. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. We have given you a great victory, or a big conquest is going to occur. Muslims became very happy when Allah foretold them about this great victory. Then the Prophet ﷺ asked the companions, tonight when we sleep, who will be our haris? Man yahrusuna? What does haris mean? Guard. Who is going to be our guard for this evening? Ibn Mas'ud says to the Prophet, I volunteer to be the guard tonight. The Prophet says to Ibn Mas'ud, according to these reports, no, you will sleep. So he said to the Prophet, please, make me the guard, I will not sleep. I'll stay awake till the morning. The Prophet said, okay, if you insist. Ibn Mas'ud says, I was the guard that night, but shortly before the morning, I remembered the words of the Prophet telling me, you will sleep, and suddenly I just got so sleepy and I just passed out. When I awoke, I saw that the sun was rising. When we woke up, the Prophet ﷺ said something. Ibn Mas'ud basically tells us that all the Muslims, pretty much, or most of the companions, they missed the Fajr prayer. They were all asleep, and maybe one of the responsibilities of the guard is to wake them up for the salah. So if the guard slept, everyone else slept. So he says, when we woke up, the Prophet said, Inna Allah law sha'a an la tanamu anha la tanamu. If it was Allah's will to keep you all awake, you would have stayed awake. وَلَكِنَّهُ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَكُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ بَعْدَكُمْ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted this to be a lesson for those after you. And then He showed them how to do the qada. This incident has been mentioned. Ibn Mas'ud says this happened at Hudaybiyah, after Hudaybiyah. Other reports indicate this happened during the expedition of Tabuk, after Hudaybiyah. So what are our observations on this report? Some Muslims from other schools of thought have tried to use this report to claim that the Prophet also missed the Fajr prayer. We dispute that. We say, first of all, the hadith itself doesn't say the Prophet missed it. There is no explicit statement in the report that says the Prophet missed it. Ibn Mas'ud said, we missed it. He doesn't explicitly state the Prophet also missed it. So we in the school of Ahlul Bayt, most of our scholars have not accepted that the Prophet missed the prayer. That's the first observation. The second observation, why did they miss the prayer? So if we look at the response of the Prophet, he is basically saying to them that Allah allowed you to sleep in this morning and for you to miss the prayer and then you'll do it qada, so that other Muslims know if sometimes they miss the prayer, not intentionally, not deliberately, it just happened so that they missed the prayer, it's not the end of the universe. Allah is still Ghafoor, Allah is still Rahim, you can do the qada. It was a way to teach Muslims about that. Because some Muslims, had this not happened, they would have thought that if you missed one prayer, even if accidentally like that, you're doomed. You're tariq as-salah, you've abandoned prayer, you're kafir, you're going to hell. This makes some mu'mins lose hope in the mercy of Allah. So the Prophet was teaching them that Allah's mercy is vast. You're not infallible people. If you miss salah not intentionally, do the qada, Allah will forgive you and He'll accept it from you. It was a way to show the rahmah of Allah. However, we believe this did not include the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam. They prayed. It's the companions who missed the prayer. We even believe that the ma'soom doesn't fall asleep like we do. We have hadiths that state that when the infallible sleeps, he's fully conscious and he's fully awake. His body is sleeping, but his mind is awake. So it's not even conceivable for the Prophet to miss the prayer. Now, other Muslims will say it wasn't in his hands. He was traveling, he got so tired, he fell asleep, not intentionally, meaning he just fell asleep. He did not want to fall asleep, he couldn't wake up. So, from their perspective, they would say, no, he did not commit a sin, he did not even make a mistake, he just couldn't get up. Even some of them claim Allah put him to sleep, just so he could show the ummah that you're not doomed if you miss a prayer. By the way, some of our Shia ulama have accepted that. Al-Shaykh al-Saduq, with his whole theory about Isha, we examined that in Islamic beliefs. Of course, we rejected it. But some Shia scholars have also accepted that. They believe that Allah made the Prophet sleep. Yani Allah was now in control. He was running the scene. He put him to sleep to show Muslims that, look, if one day that happens to you, it's not the end of the world. Allah did that to the Prophet, so it's okay. It can happen to you. So there are a minority of Shia scholars who have accepted such types of reports. Of course, the majority of ulama today, they don't accept that. Yes.
If we accept this report, then what would be our scholars' response to, say, a counter-argument? Why didn't the Prophet or Imam Ali
So if they were awake, why did they not wake up the companions? So if we analyze the response of the Prophet, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَوْ شَاءَ أَنْ لَا تَنَامُوا عَنْهَا لَا تَنَامُوا وَلَكِنَّهُ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَكُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ بَعْدَكُمْ. Allah wanted this to be a lesson for others. It was by Allah's command that He would not wake them up. So the Prophet had revelation from Allah that today your companions are going to miss their prayers. Don't wake them up. By the way, is it wajib to wake up people for prayer? No, it's not wajib. Most scholars say it's not mandatory. Because the person's asleep. They're not actively committing a sin by abandoning prayer. So it's not mandatory on the Prophet to wake them up. Normally he would. But that day he didn't because Allah wanted to make a lesson for the ummah. So that could be a response. By the way, some maraja' have a tafsil, meaning they say that when it comes to other people, you don't have to wake them up for prayer. Only your immediate family you have to wake them up. Your ahl. I asked one of the maraji' who has this fatwa, that if it's your ahl, your family, like your children, your parents, your wife, your husband, once I asked him, what's your proof that you say you have to wake them up? He said, my understanding of this verse, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ, and command your ahl, your family, to pray. He says, I believe this is so general that it includes even when they're sleeping. Of course, most maraji' have not accepted that. But this is an opinion amongst some Shia scholars, that if it's your immediate family, you have to wake them up for prayer. But other Muslims, if they're sleeping, you're not obligated to wake them up for prayer. It's not wajib on you to wake them up.
So who would be included in that?
Anyone who's ahl. So linguistically, ahl are basically your immediate family, your siblings, your parents, your children. In some considerations, it also includes the spouse as well. Even though that's disputed, whether it includes the spouse or not. Some say yes, some say no. So this also, according to the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, happened after Hudaybiyah. And another proof that the Prophet didn't miss the prayer, and Imam Ali didn't miss the prayer, is the miracle of Radd al-Shams, of the sun going back up. There are two instances, to summarize this very briefly, when the sun went back up for Imam Ali alayhi salam. One happened during the life of the Prophet, one happened after the Prophet. And basically, without going into the details of it, basically what happened is the Imam alayhi salam was busy doing something important. So, when he was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one narration indicates, the Prophet was resting by having his head in the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and so the Imam did not want to disturb the Prophet. Or if we go by the second miracle, which happened when the Imam was passing by in Iraq, I think on his way back from Siffin, he was in a land which was cursed. The Imam said that no prophet or wasi of a prophet, successor of a prophet, can pray in this land. You guys can pray, Salat al-Asr. I can't pray here. I have to leave this cursed land for me to pray. It's a long story. Maybe one day we can analyze it. So the Imam said, I'm commanded by Allah to leave this land. When the Imam left that area, the sun was about to set, such that he didn't have time to do Salat al-Asr anymore. In honor of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and to show that indeed he's the successor of the Prophet, Allah raised the sun. By the way, this has Sahih Sunni sources, not just Shia hadiths. Sahih Sunni chains of narration that indicate Allah, had the sun go back up. So Imam Ali does not miss a single salah. So if we know that Allah would not allow Imam Ali to miss a salah, then we know at Hudaybiyah, if he and the Prophet were sleeping, assuming they'd wake up and the sun had risen, Allah would make it go back up again. Maybe, I can't say that's like 100% evidence, but it's a clue that they did not miss the prayer. Because Allah would not allow any of the ma'sumin to miss their prayers. Yes.
So you said that the Prophet only slept with his body and he was conscious?
Yes, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt would say our body from the outside sleeps, but our heart does not sleep. And heart basically means our mind.
So but wouldn't that contradict with that he dreamed and he saw visions and dreams while he was sleeping?
So the vision that the Prophet would see is that when you'd see him sleeping in that state, Allah would show him a vision. So he wasn't sleeping like you and I sleep. But the Prophet would appear as if he's sleeping. His eyes are closed. As his eyes were closed, Allah showed him a vision. That's how he would see a vision. So you're right, the vision that the Prophet would see in the sleep is slightly different than the visions we see. Yeah, this is miraculous, of course. The Imam says this is specific to us, the Ahlul Bayt, the infallible leaders of Ahlul Bayt. That when we sleep, our soul and our mind is still fully conscious. We're aware of our surroundings. It is hard to comprehend, you're right. But remember, they're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah is sending them revelation and they're infallible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gives them that status as well. Where their spiritual existence is so powerful, even in the moment of sleep, that consciousness is not taken away from them.